Welcome back to New Day. Ambassador Ron Sticker of the Netherlands is here in the studio. But first, we'll talk about malaria. We've been joined by Samuel Pong. He's the Monitoring and Evaluation Officer of the National Malaria Control Program. Sam, good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
I'm good.
Interesting. This year's malaria theme says, end malaria for good. Is it a myth or a reality?
I think it's a reality because some countries have gone through this and then they've ended it. We can talk about an African country like Morocco, and South Africa is also making strides. Zanzibar in Tanzania, they have also made strides. Equatorial Guinea is also close to eradicating or eliminating malaria. So it's possible.
I think I tend to agree with you based on what I saw last Monday, the statistics that Dr. Constance Plage gave out there, the First Lady applauded and all of that. We're making some progress. But tell me, what's the burden of tackling malaria in this country?
So when you talk about burden, you are talking about two things. So deaths associated with the disease and then the illness, the degree of illness associated with the disease. And in Ghana here, there is a procedure for arriving at what is malaria. So the first is they suspect the cases. And so as a unit or as a program, we also document cases that are suspected. And as at last year, we had 10.4 million suspected cases of malaria.
Wow.
So translating to like 28,600 cases a day across the country for the whole year. And then in terms of also the deaths, we've made strides as at last year, 1,200 people of all ages died from malaria. But among children under 5, we've gone down to like 590. So we are making strides. The burden is still there. Out of all these suspected cases, what we are investigating is that we test to really know the true malaria cases.
Before you treat.
Before we treat.
So tell me, it looks as if per the statistics, the deaths are reducing.
Yes.
And what could be accounting for this? Are we doing some more work? Are the people responding to the treatment, the ACT since they came? Tell me about it.
So what we, as a program, what we championed is that apart from the test treat, what we did was that we also train adequately health workers. That even if a case comes in a severe condition, the child should not die or the person should not die. So it's effective case management in our public and private health facilities. That is alluding to those. Admissions are going up, but then once the cases are managed well, the client don't die from malaria, and I think that is really what is contributing.
I know that there have been interventions, that have been put in place. For example, the long-lasting insecticide-treated nets that free distribution week goes on. But what else is there? So,
as you said, the LLINs or long-lasting nets have been demonstrated to contribute to over 50% of mortalities worldwide. These are clinical trials which have been done in other countries and even in Ghana. But then we also have IRS, which has contributed a lot. When you talk about Upper West region, in 2011, their prevalence of malaria was around 51%. We deployed IRS there, and then as of last year, they were now on 22%. So which is really a tremendous decrease. Yes, Upper East also used to be high, around 40% in 2011. Now it's gone down to 11%. We had Northern region around 48%. Now it's gone down to around 22%. So really,
so what could be accounting for the high figures up north?
So the north particularly has a high bacterial capacity. When we talk about bacterial capacity, it means that the vectors there are really efficient. And then they have a main transmission season. Usually their rains are just within a short time. And within that short time, you have a lot of mosquitoes breeding and then coming up. And then these are able to help with the transmission a lot.
Interesting.
And so the IRS mainly is supposed to bring down the mosquito population so that they don't transmit the malaria.
Interesting. I want us to talk about the challenges to the progress that we are making. You have already told me about some of the progress that we are making. Is it enough? What challenges do we have? What do we need to do?
So we've come from an era of non-adherence to protocol. As in, you go to a health facility and then the doctor says, well, this one I am sure is malaria, so I don't need to test. And so they give you the STTs.
By just looking at your face?
Yes. I mean, I met a doctor who said I can smell malaria 1 kilometer away.
Wow.
So, yeah, so people became familiar, health workers became familiar with the malaria that they couldn't really test before.
Right.
But we've made strides in really getting health workers to test. We used to come from a low figure in 2014 of 38% testing rate.
Okay.
Last year we were at 77%. So we think that we are making. The other challenge has been the use of the nets.
Right.
People are misusing the net.
How?
So the nets are now being used for goalposts, for fishing, for fencing gardens, for
really?
Yes.
For fishing.
Yes. And also for these tricycles which pick rubbish.
Right, the itinerant rubbish collectors.
They just now use the net for covering nets. Wow. And these are misuse of the net.
Do they know what the net is supposed to be
I think they know. They know because for every campaign, net distribution campaign, there is an extensive social mobilization campaign which follows. And it's try to educate the people that the nets are meant for sleeping and not really.
I know you work with some NGOs in the distribution of these nets.
Yes.
Do you know if they tell the people what the nets are for, and do they do follow-ups and mop-ups as well?
I will lay my hat for the NGOs. They are doing really great job. The thing is that people have enough nets,
right,
but others don't have. But those who have enough nets don't find use for them again. And so what we are preaching is that for a household which doesn't have, or the household which has more than it needs, just give it to another household which doesn't really have. And then this will go a long way to make the net equitable among the population.
There have been varying themes, very captivating themes over the years. I mean, if you run us by a few of them, indeed, we'll see how. But the bigger picture is by 2030, we should end malaria for good. How close are we to the goalpost? Okay,
so the African target is 2030, you eliminate malaria. You should know that for the whole world, there are 10 countries which are contributing to the burden of malaria.
Right.
And Ghana happens to be one of the 10 countries. So our strategic plan is to reduce the malaria burden by 75% using 2012 as a baseline.
Right.
And then when we talk about ending malaria, really we have to get to a prevalence level of less than 5 before we can move to pre-elimination. Now our prevalence level is 20.4. And we think that from now till 2030, we should stand in readiness for this. Even if we are not talking about eradicating or eliminating, we should be at the pre-elimination. And that is why we need to really invest more, because in countries where funding has gone down, there has been resurgence of malaria.
So it's funding, it's about attitudinal change, it's about testing before you treat, and what else? What are you leaving us with?
Okay, and so what we are saying that malaria is a disease which should not kill. It's a preventable disease. We should all engage ourselves and in our small areas try to really get rid of these stagnant waters. Use the effective tools which have been proven and which have been deployed in the country, the ITN, the IRS, the larvicides, pregnant women when you are pregnant, seek early health care, get appropriate treatment for malaria.
So for doxine pyrimethamine.
Yes, the SP that we talk about. For a child under 5, if he's sick, seek prompt and early treatment. And these will also. We also engage that we also pray that the government will increase its funding because now donor funding is dwindling.
Right.
And we need
so we need to look into our own.
Yes, and that is why we are glad that this private sector-led malaria foundation has been launched, and we think that will increase the funding for malaria.
Samuel Pon, grateful for your time. And Samuel Pon is the head of monitoring and evaluation at the National Malaria Control Program. He's joined us here this morning to talk about malaria. You can be a part of the change that we so much desire. When we return,